She grew up in a 44-room house with a 9-hole golf course on the lawn, and the man who tucked her in had lost 2 fingers to a bomb before she was born. Suzanne Lloyd was raised at Greenacres by her grandfather. To the rest of the world, he was the young man in the round glasses, dangling off the face of a clock 12 stories above Los Angeles traffic, one of the most famous images in the history of movies. To her, he was the person who paid the school bills and kept the dogs and taught her how to work a camera. She is the reason you can watch his films today. She is also the person who can explain why, for about 50 years, you mostly could not. Start with the hand because she has said everything else grows out of it. August 1919. Harold Lloyd was 26 and already popular, doing a photo shoot for a comedy short. A prop man handed him a bomb. It was supposed to be fake, the kind that puffs smoke for a gag. Lloyd used it to light his cigarette. It was live. It took off his thumb and index finger on his right hand, burned his face, and for several months doctors were not sure he would see again. He was back on set inside a year. But now he had a problem no comedian had ever had to solve. His whole act was physical. He needed hands. So a prosthetics maker built him a flesh-colored glove with 2 stuffed fingers inside it. He wore it in every film he made after that, and he built his shots around hiding it. His granddaughter has pointed this out to people for decades, and once you know it, you cannot stop seeing the choreography of the concealment. The right hand tucked in a pocket, a hat carried in a way that covers it. His body turned a certain way in the frame. Then he went and hung off buildings. That is the part people struggle with. The clock scene in safety. Last came 4 years after the accident. He is holding his own body weight in the air with a hand that has 3 fingers and a fake glove, and he is doing it for comedy. Now, the ledges in that film were real, but the drop was staged. There was a platform built out below him on the roof of an adjacent building, and the camera angle removed it. He was not risking a 12-story fall. He was risking a fall of maybe 30 feet onto a mattress with a damaged grip, over and over for takes. No studio today would let an actor near it. Audiences ate it up. Safety. Last made him enormous. Before the clock, there was Grandma's Boy, in 1922, the first time the glasses character carried a whole feature. A timid grandson, a Civil War story from an old woman, and then the boy goes out and actually finishes the fight. Feature length, no tramp, no pie fight as the whole joke. Producers who had him down as a 2-reeler comic had to recut their math. 2 years after the clock, he made The Freshman. A small-town kid goes to college, gets used as the water boy, and then, in the last reel, actually wins the game. That was the character the country wanted in 1925. Not a tramp, not a stone face, a boy in glasses who kept trying. The Freshman did the kind of business studios still talk about a century later. Speedy, in 1928, was the last of the silents, shot on the real streets of New York, with Babe Ruth playing himself for a few minutes and then getting out of the way. Lloyd was not visiting the era. He was the era. He married his leading lady, Mildred Davis, in 1923, and she left the screen. The woman who had been next to him on the clock became Mrs. Lloyd, and the public never got another picture of the two of them as a pair. Suzanne grew up knowing that as a household fact, not a headline. The films kept coming. The on-screen marriage ended the day the real one began. Here is where the story gets strange, though, because by every measure, Harold Lloyd won the silent era, and then he lost the memory of it. Look at the numbers. Across the 1920s, his films took in more money at the American box office than Chaplin's did, and more than Keaton's did. He made more features than either of them. He was not the melancholy tramp, and he was not the stone face. He played a kid in glasses who wanted to get ahead, get the girl, and make something of himself, and in a decade of rising American optimism, that character sold better than sadness. He was also unusually good at business. He owned his negatives. He controlled his own productions. That decision made him wealthy in a way most performers of the period never got close to, and it bought the estate his granddaughter grew up in. Then sound arrived, and the thing that had made him the biggest comic in the country started working against him. His comedy lived in silence. The pacing, the escalating physical logic of a gag, the way an audience reads a body when there is no dialogue to carry it. Talking pictures wanted talking. He did keep making them. Movie Crazy in 1932 was a real picture that a real audience turned out for. The Cat's Paw came 2 years after that, and The Milky Way after that. The doors did not close on him. The arithmetic just changed. Each one cost more and returned less than the silent run had. And by 1938, he had made his last starring feature for nearly a decade. Some of those films were fine. None of them were what he had been. He tried once more, late. In 1947, Preston Sturges put him back in front of a camera for The Sin of Harold Diddlebach, a comeback built on the same glasses and the same climb. Howard Hughes took the picture over, recut it, and put it out again as Mad Wednesday. Neither version brought the 1920s back. It is the last starring film he ever made. The doors had not slammed. The country had simply moved on, and this time he did not chase it. He was not ruined. That is important, and it is where his story separates from the ones people usually tell about silent stars. He did not die broke, and he did not die forgotten by his own family. He had made too much money and been too careful with it. But he had something worse in a way. He had time, and he had control of his own films, and he chose to keep them off the market. This is the decision Suzanne has spent her life explaining, and defending, and then undoing. Lloyd owned his library, and he was protective of it past the point of reason. He did not want his work chopped up for early television, with commercials cutting through the gags. He believed the timing would be destroyed, and he was right about the timing. A Harold Lloyd sequence is engineering. You cut a hole in it for a soap advertisement, and the machine stops working. So for decades, while Chaplin's films and Keaton's shorts found their way to new audiences on television sets and in revival houses, Harold Lloyd's movies mostly sat in his own vault. A generation grew up on Chaplin and Keaton. That same generation barely saw Lloyd. His granddaughter watched him make that trade in real time, inside the house, and she has been blunt about what it cost him. If you remember the clock, or if someone in your family used to talk about the boy in the glasses, stay with this channel. We tell one of these stories every week, the ones that sat in a vault while the other names kept circulating. He spent those years on other things, and they were odd, wonderful things. He became a serious photographer and shot thousands of images, a great many of his own family, all in three-dimensional stereo. She was in front of that camera constantly as a child. The collection ran into the hundreds of thousands of frames. Decades later, she published the Hollywood ones, and people who thought they knew the silent comics discovered a second career sitting in boxes in that house. The man who would not let television cut his gags had been taking pictures the whole time, and almost nobody had seen those either. He got deep into Shriner's Freemasonry and rose to the top of it. He raised Great Danes. He kept the estate running. He tried, late, to fix the record. In 1962, he cut Harold Lloyd's World of Comedy from his own vault and put it in theaters. He went out with it. Audiences laughed. A sequel, The Funny Side of Life, followed the next year. It was a reminder, not a restoration. The full features still sat at home. In 1953, the Academy had already given him an honorary Oscar and called him a master comedian and a good citizen, which is a strangely gentle line for a man who once hung off a clock with half a hand. He was a founding member of that Academy. The honor arrived 20 years after the last picture anyone still quoted. He died in 1971, at 77, of prostate cancer. Suzanne was a young woman. The estate went to auction. Green Acres was eventually broken up and sold off in pieces. And the film sat there, still tied up, still hard to see. That is the inheritance she actually received. Not the house, the vault. What she did with it took the rest of her life. She took over the archive, sorted out the rights her grandfather had guarded so jealously that they had nearly strangled him, and put the money and the years into restoration. Prints cleaned up, scores recorded. The features and the shorts finally released properly, in order the way he would have wanted them seen, on the formats that came along long after he was gone. Which means the protection worked. It just worked 50 years late. Now you can watch him. And when people do, the reaction is almost always the same kind of surprise. He is faster than they expect. The gags are built more tightly than they expect. The clock still works on a modern audience exactly the way it worked in 1923. So the man did not fade because he failed. He faded because he protected the work too well, and the protection outlasted him. That is the part worth sitting with. Chaplin and Keaton stayed famous, partly because their films kept circulating, on television, in bad prints, cut up, watched by kids on Saturday afternoons who did not know they were watching history. Lloyd refused that. He wanted his comedy shown the right way, or not at all. He got his wish. It cost him 50 years of his own reputation, and it took his granddaughter most of her own life to buy them back. There is another object from that same Hollywood that went missing the other way. Not locked in a family vault. Gone. The first Oscar ever handed to a black performer. A wooden plaque. Not even the statuette people picture. And it has not been seen since the 1960s. Hattie McDaniel won it. Next time we will tell you what happened to the award, and to her.